Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever or whenever you may be. This is the overnight, and apparently I haven't updated all of the intros, only some of the intros with the newer logo. But this is the wrap up to our continuing series on the first 10 amendments of the Constitution. Uh, with me is Baron. How you doing, Baron?
I am under the weather, but I am here. You might be able to hear a little frog in my throat, but
Still
I
sexy
will
as ever.
endure.
And my camera's off because I've already dropped once. So I'm hoping we can make it through the chat. Let's take a quick look who is out there. DJ. He's usually first out there. Gun websites. CNT Designs and Arms. 2 Live Mo. G23. I think. Oh, Ozzy Osbourne. And Gabriel. That's who we're seeing there right now. And so the Eighth Amendment. Can you read what the Eighth Amendment is?
Sure can. Eighth Amendment. Excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishment inflicted.
Oh, before we get going, and I forget which one. There we go. There's a banner at the bottom of the screen with an email address and a link. So if you want to submit comments, suggestions, or pictures within reason, there's a way to do that. In the description, there's a whole bunch of Supreme Court cases, and at the very bottom, there's a link for the Gilded server. It's another way that you can send in pictures or just hang out and chat with other people.
Speaking of Gilded, we have an important announcement to make. We hit a milestone that I never thought we'd see. We hit 2,110 members last week. Couldn't believe it.
Yeah, 2,100 or what was it? 2110?
2,110.
Yeah, of the same person, I believe.
3 people and a bunch of bots.
Ah. But hopefully they had fun while they were there. Because they weren't there very long.
They're all cat themed. I'm starting to suspect Gizzard Gary may have had something to do with this.
George got on the computer.
Yep.
But so if you watch this in replay, be sure and leave a comment, whatever we talk about. If you agree, disagree, or think we left something out, let me know. I always read the comments. So the Eighth Amendment, excessive bail, cruel and unusual punishment. Most of the cases that I have involve the death penalty, the cruel and unusual. And I've kind of went with a timeline. This is not all the cases, but just because some of them are a little bit redundant, and then some of them are kind of dry. So I pared it down a little bit, but there's still a lot of cases.
Oh, an answer to G23. Yes, that is why I deleted the Gilded server invites from our server. I did not want you guys getting hit by bots in your servers. So I did you a favor. I might add them back in once the coast is clear.
Midget with carrot cake is out there. Good evening. So 1878, executions by public shooting, not cruel and unusual. It's Wilkerson versus Utah. Supreme Court rules that it is not cruel and unusual punishment to execute a prisoner convicted of first-degree murder by public shooting. The court does not. The court notes that such punishment is imposed by the military when soldiers are found guilty of certain offenses, and if it's allowed in the military, then it is not cruel and unusual. I thought that was really interesting. That because I think things have changed in the military as of recent, so things that were not cruel and unusual might be considered cruel and unusual now. One of the other things that you'll see and comes up in both the 8th and 9th, there are cases which within even a few years get reversed by the Supreme Court. They reverse their own rulings. So nothing is set in stone.
I say we make everything cruel and unusual, so the government can't punish for anything. That'd be nice, wouldn't it? They just have no teeth.
Well, that would play into states' rights versus federal argument. But 1910 punishment must be appropriate to the crime. That's Weems versus the United States, and there are links to all the. Pretty sure I got them all in there. I don't know. There's a bunch, so hopefully I didn't miss any. But all these cases, there are links. So if anybody wants to go look up the full record, they can. Supreme Court finds unconstitutional the sentence of an officer in the government of the Philippines, the U.S. territory, who had been found guilty of falsifying an official document because it amounts to cruel and unusual punishment. So he had been sentenced to 15 years in prison, hard labor, and lifetime of surveillance.
Yikes.
Loss of the right to vote, parental rights, and right to own property.
Parental rights. God damn.
So the Supreme Court found
he forged a document. That's what he did.
Pretty much. So the Supreme Court said that was out of proportion for the crime that he had committed. The 1958 court cites evolving standards when death penalty is imposed. I thought this was kind of interesting. In 2 cases, the United States courts tackle questions of when sentencing is disproportionate to the crime, to be cruel and unusual. The court makes clear the meaning of what is cruel and unusual will change over time depending on society's own attitude about crime and punishment. I think I only put a link for the Trop versus Dulles case. The court notes in the 8th Amendment must draw its meaning from the evolving standards of decency that mark the progress of a maturing society. The justices,
thank God. Can you imagine if we did text, history, and tradition for cruel and unusual, and they start like putting us under a board and then putting stones on us until we die from being crushed? Like, well, we did it back then. That'd be fucking terrifying.
Well, the stocks.
Yeah.
The floating test to see if you're a witch.
Fuck.
The justices conclude that it is unconstitutionally cruel and unusual to punish. That had to do with a soldier who had deserted, um, and his citizenship was revoked.
Hmm.
The second case that was involved in that ruling, or that comes up 4 years later, Robinson versus California, which I did not put a link, and I should have. Um, they struck down a California law which made it illegal to be addicted to drugs. Court rules that given it is now known that drug addiction is an illness, it is overly harsh to imprison an individual solely for the basis of addiction. Which
I agree.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that one too. And the whole drug thing is, another argument. The war on drugs.
The government's winning that one, right?
No.
They're going to get it any day now.
Yes,
just wait.
Drug use has completely stopped because it was illegal. So, 1972, most death penalty statutes declared unconstitutional. The Supreme Court decides 3 cases known as a group. A lot of times there'll be cases that go up to the Supreme Court. They get grouped together, so it's all, if they are really similar, so they're all heard at once rather than one at a time. But the U.S. Supreme Court decides the 3 cases known as a group as Furman versus Georgia. The majority of the court finds Georgia's death penalty statute, which gives the jury complete discretion in sentencing, imposes cruel and unusual punishment. There is not a majority opinion on exactly why the statute is cruel and unusual, although 3 justices say the death penalty is too arbitrary, with poor and minority defendants tending to get the death penalty more than rich white defendants. 2 other justices say the death penalty is always cruel and unusual. The Furman opinion strikes Georgia's death penalty and those like it in 40 other states, affecting 600 death row inmates. So I believe that was that the jury cannot the jury cannot assign the death penalty. Because I know the two cases, I didn't sit in on a death penalty one, but for Washington, it was the jury would decide guilt or innocence, and then the judge would assign
sentencing.
Do
we have the death penalty?
I think we still do. I can't remember. God, I don't remember if there was a moratorium on ours. Because up until probably like 10 years ago, you could still choose hanging as an option for your death penalty.
Fuck, who would pick that?
Well, it'd be instant.
Not if they mess it up. No. And it's the government, so they're going to go with the lowest bidder. You're going to get hung by the lowest bidder. That doesn't sound fun.
So 1976, indifference to prisoner medical needs is cruel and unusual. Estelle versus Gamble, the U.S. Supreme Court rules that prison officials' willing indifference to serious medical needs of a prisoner is cruel and unusual punishment in violation of the Eighth Amendment. The court again says the Eighth Amendment protects against more than just physical barbarous punishment, such as torture. It protects also its protections also include civilized standards, humanity, and decency.
So Washington did do away with the death penalty
Did,
back in 18.
1976 court defines when death penalty is constitutional. In a trio of cases known as Gregg versus Georgia, the U.S. Supreme Court rules that the death penalty is constitutional when there are sentencing guidelines, when decisions of guilt or innocence are made separately from sentencing, and there are immediate repeal of convictions and sentences for capital defendants. The ruling permits executions to resume. 1976 mandatory death sentences are struck down. It's Woodson versus North Carolina. U.S. Supreme Court finds unconstitutional a North Carolina law making the death penalty mandatory whenever a defendant is convicted of first-degree murder. The court rules in light of shaky public support for the death penalty and the absolute nature of the punishment. Fundamental respect for humanity demands that juries have discretion to consider all aggravating and mitigating factors and to impose a different penalty if they find it appropriate.
I agree with that.
1982, offender's age is mitigating factor in imposing death penalties. Eddings versus Oklahoma, U.S. Supreme Court finds that an offender's youth is a mitigating factor that a jury may take into account when deciding whether to impose a death penalty, but is not an absolute bar to a death sentence. That's one that, I don't know. I've been trying to kind of think through, what do you do when you have minors that murder? 8-year-old, 12-year-old, 16-year-old. Where do you draw the line where you give the death sentence?
I don't think I ever would.
I think that that does.
I'd spend less money trying to rehabilitate them. And if that fails, you can lock them up for the rest of their life, and it's still cheaper than giving somebody the death penalty.
It does come up here in a couple more cases dealing with that. But just the reforming a minor, for their age and their understanding of the world. Do you just lock them away forever?
But don't they say your brain isn't fully formed until you're like 24?
Something like that.
So like you kill somebody at 12, I gotta think there's still a chance you can help that person.
I would hope so.
What's the downside? You save money.
Yeah. Now I lost my place. 1986, execution of insane inmates banned. Ford versus Wainwright. The U.S. Supreme Court rules that it is cruel and unusual punishment to execute an insane offender. The court also demands that sentencing court follow specific procedures for deciding whether an offender is mentally competent to be sentenced to death. And that's one that comes up not just with inmates that might be insane, but mentally handicapped.
Hmm.
And the court goes back and forth on that one.
Like, didn't they just do that with the Parkland shooter?
I haven't followed that at all, so I don't know.
Yeah, I think they had the option to give him the death penalty, but they gave him life because he was insane and had been abused. There was mitigating factors, I think.
1988 execution of juveniles found unconstitutional. Thompson versus Oklahoma. Supreme Court concludes that according to society's evolving standards of decency, it is cruel and unusual punishment in violation of the Eighth Amendment to execute offenders who commit their crimes when under the age of 16. A year later, however, Stanford versus Kentucky, the court approves execution for defendants who were 16 or 17 when they committed their crime. I can't remember if that one was he was 16 when that one was the one where killed an officer when he was 16. Uh, 1989 execution of intellectually disabled inmates is upheld. Penry versus Lina, the U.S. Supreme Court rules that an offender's intellectual disability is not an absolute bar to being sentenced to death, but instead should be considered by the jury as a mitigating factor in deciding whether to impose the death penalty. 1993. Now this one, evidence of innocence not enough to invalidate death sentence. In Herrera v. Collins, the U.S. Supreme Court rules that even though a death row inmate may be able to present new evidence tending to show his innocence, that is insufficient reason to overturn a death sentence.
And this is why I'm against the death penalty being carried out by the fucking government.
If the trial was otherwise fair and met all constitutional requirements.
They're literally going to murder innocent people, even when they know. They don't give a fuck.
Yeah, in this case, it was there was a lot of stuff to show he was guilty, even statements he had made. I don't believe he specifically said he was guilty, but statements he made would lead you to believe that he was saying he was guilty. And then the evidence. And I forget how many years later he had was trying to bring in proof that he was innocent. And the court said no.
So the Franklin quote, "It is better that 100 guilty persons should escape than one innocent person should suffer." I think a lot more innocent people get put behind bars than we actually realize.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't assign a percentage, but I do believe it does happen. And the reason, I think one of the reasons that nobody cares is that
they're guilty of another crime.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like, oh, this guy is guilty of beating up women, and then, oh, we think he murdered one, but he didn't. Like, fuck, throw him in jail anyway. Who cares?
That was something I've heard in the past, years and years ago, dealing with the death penalty. Was, well, they're guilty, of other stuff. Well, they may have been guilty of other stuff. Were they guilty of this thing? Because that matters.
Yeah, they don't care.
No. 2002, court reverses itself on execution of mentally retarded inmates. Atkins versus Virginia, U.S. Supreme Court reverses its 1989 Perry decision and finds that execution of people who are mentally retarded is cruel and unusual punishment in violation of the Eighth Amendment. The court cites evolving standards of decency. That's one that we've heard this third or fourth time. The evolving standards of decency as a key basis of its opinion, noting that just 2 states banned the execution of mentally retarded offenders at the time that Perry was decided, but now 20 states and the federal government have banned them. 2005, execution of juveniles held unconstitutional. Roper versus Simmons. The U.S. Supreme Court rules that executions of juveniles violates the Eighth Amendment. Writing in the majority opinion, Justice Kennedy finds that juveniles demonstrate a lack of maturity and an undeveloped sense of responsibility, are susceptible to peer pressure, and have an immature personality. Therefore, they cannot reliably be classified among the worst offenders.
What do you think about that?
I would tend to agree with that.
Yep.
I'm not going too deep into this just so we can get through all this.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot there. I think there is a lot there that we could discuss.
Yeah, we could spend 2 hours just on death penalty cases.
Well, I mean, just on that part of the death penalty case.
Mm-hmm.
So, no life term without parole for juveniles guilty of crimes other than homicide. The U.S. Supreme Court decides 5-4 decision, rejects life sentences without parole for juveniles who are convicted of crimes other than homicide, saying it violates the Eighth Amendment ban on cruel and unusual punishment. The ruling in Graham versus Florida extends the court's movement towards treating minors differently from adults. Justice Kennedy, writing in the majority, says states must provide juveniles who have lengthy sentences a meaningful chance at some point to show they should be released. And that would kind of play into, should prisons be reformatory or just punitive? Should they be there just to house you for a certain amount of time, or try to help you change your ways?
Well, I mean, I see it as it having 2 purposes. You're protecting society by locking up the people that are too dangerous to be in it at the moment, and you should be rehabilitating them for when they re-enter society. Because if you're not, why the fuck are you letting them back in?
I would tend to agree with that. I have known guys. One of them, it didn't stick. He had served time for drug offenses, and when he got out, he was doing well. Had a job, and then slowly fell back into his old ways and ended up back in jail.
Was he an addict?
He used to be, and then he got clean, and then started hanging out with, his brother who got out of prison. Started hanging out with him, and then an old girl showed up who was still an addict, and he started hanging out with her, and then he kind of fell back into the lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
The other one, he's done well. He learned to be a barber in prison, and got out, and he had his own barbershop for a while, and then went to work doing something else different. But on the whole, he's a little rough around the edges, but that's how he grew up. But he's made something of himself, and is so it is possible. Let me say quick hello to Gunmetal Guy USA and John Brown Productions. How's it going? And make sure I didn't miss anybody else. I think that was the last two that jumped in. And I'm not ignoring the chat. I'm just trying to read, so I'm trying to keep an eye on both.
I am reading the chat, and I am ignoring it.
So 2019, court rules ban on excessive fines applies to states. In the case Timms versus Indiana, U.S. Supreme Court rules that the Eighth Amendment ban on excessive fines applies to states and local governments. The case involved car owners whose $42,000 Land Rover was seized by the state of Indiana after he was arrested for selling heroin to undercover police for $400. Justice Ginsburg wrote, forfeiture of the Land Rover would grossly disproportionate. I know
Disproportion.
This word. Disproportionate. Would be disproportionate to the gravity of the offense. She said excessive fines undermine the liberties since they could be used to retaliate against political enemies. They also have been used as a source of revenue. The ruling meaning the states and local governments cannot use fines to raise revenue. Seizure is a whole nother thing, which I am absolutely against. In this case specifically, he didn't use drug money to buy that car. His father died, and he used the inheritance to buy the car. But asset forfeiture is, I think it incentivizes departments to seize things. Because then they get the money for it, or they get to use the thing. And, there are stories of like a department seizing. The one story was they raided, I don't remember if it was a bar or something, and then seized the pool table and put it in their rec room.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I have a tangential example of a excessive fine for a little tiny infringement. Or not an infringement. What's the word I'm looking for? Infraction. Like if you have a 15.5-inch barrel on a rifle and you were supposed to pay a $200 tax, then they throw you in jail for 10 years and give you a fine of $10,000.
That is an argument that I have seen about the punishment for the not paying that tax.
Yeah, like at most it should be like you pay $200 plus $200. Like how the fuck do they get to 10,000? What are they smoking there?
Yeah. Well, the prison sentences also for
oh yeah, that's insane.
Tax.
You didn't pay $200, so you spent 10 years in prison.
Yeah.
For a half an inch of a barrel.
You bent up a coat hanger, so you're doing 10 years.
Did a ATF informant probably asked you to do for him? Hey man, can you? I screwed up the threads on this. Can you just like trim it down an inch and rethread it for me? Yeah, no problem. Okay, I'm gonna have to ask you to put your hands behind your back. What?
Yeah, that's the whole you've got too much money.
Yeah, you got to prove where you got it.
Yeah. That's a complete Bullshit. That was God. Who was it? I don't know. It wasn't New York. One of the states, Upper East. That they're kind of known for doing that, seizing stuff. I can't remember where it was. I read it. It was a couple years ago that I read the story.
I know they
Black.
do it on Indian reservations. They love pulling over people that are from outside the area, and they'll just confiscate your fucking car.
Black Cat Outdoors. Good morning. Probably getting ready to hit the road.
Dinosaurs aren't real. There's no way you can tell me what a T-Rex looked like just from a shin bone. That was a whale, and you know it.
Dinosaurs are real, and they died 2,000 years ago.
Yeah, they couldn't get on the ark. They were too big.
So the Ninth Amendment, I don't have any cases I pulled up because it's never been used as the sole basis of a Supreme Court ruling. It's always lumped in with other ones, and when you research it, the one that you'll find is Griswold versus, is it the U.S.? Griswold versus somebody, but had to do with contraception for married couples, and it fell under the right of privacy, and the right of privacy isn't in the Constitution specifically, but an amalgamation of rights grants, according to the Supreme Court. Basically, you take a whole bunch of different rights, and that equals right to privacy. I guess. Why don't you read what the Ninth Amendment is?
Ninth Amendment, coming right up. Ninth Amendment. The enumeration of the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed or to deny or disparage others retained by the people.
Yeah.
For example, that we had rights that came from English common law that are not included in our Constitution, but are still part of our history and our rights.
Yeah. So the court uses that to bolster other rights rather than being it granting or it being a specific right itself.
Sounds fishy. Not sure I believe this.
Well, they used to be the T-Rex, the ones they had on display. Later on, they said, "Oh, you put the bones together wrong." So how do we know they put the bones together correctly this time?
It might have the small legs on the bottom, big legs on the top.
Yeah. Built for power, not for speed.
Mm-hmm. For example, did you know you have the right to trial by combat in the United States?
No. Actually, I did not know that.
Yes. So you can actually challenge one of the witnesses to a battle to the death.
Well, the winner is chosen by God, so.
Uh-huh. And the whole argument is if the Founding Fathers didn't want you to be able to do that, they would have said you couldn't, because they were dueling people all the time back then. It was totally normal. But, side tangent.
So let's move on to the 10th Amendment. Can you read the 10th Amendment for me, please?
I will. Let me find it. There was a guy that challenged like a meter maid to trial by combat for like a parking ticket. It didn't work. 10th Amendment. The power is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. A lot of commas in that one.
Yeah. So the powers of the federal government, interpreted broadly. In McCulloch versus Maryland, the U.S. Supreme Court rules that Congress has the authority to charter a national bank, even though such power is not specifically delegated in the Constitution. With this broad interpretation, the federal government's authority, the court sharply restricts the rights that are reserved to the states by the 10th Amendment. In that ruling, they said that the federal government can put banks in any state they wanted to, and the states can't stop it. That was more just I found that one interesting rather than it really applies to everybody in everyday life. And I don't know what year that was. I don't have the year for that one.
CNT Designs, I would say you would have to violate the NFA first, get caught, and then challenge the head of the ATF to trial by combat. But that is not legal advice. And if you take it from me, you're stealing it.
1871, states' authority under the 10th Amendment strengthened. In the Collector versus Day, the U.S. Supreme Court holds that a federal tax upon the salaries of state officials exceeds the authority delegated to the federal government by the Constitution, and that the reserved powers of the United States under the 10th Amendment nullifies such a law. That one, I think I read that one wrong when I was reading it earlier. Because I had read that. I was thinking of that, the opposite. Or does that come up later? Now I'm all messed up.
I have no idea.
Because I'm pretty sure that somewhere in there I came across where the states can't tax federal employees. That's what I was thinking that one was, but I think I got all mixed up.
I do have a tangent back to the 8th. There was a prisoner in Washington who sued the government for cruel and unusual punishment for wanting to hang him because he said, I am too fat to hang, and if you hang me, it will decapitate me. So you're not allowed to hang me. And he weighed like 450 pounds.
Yeah, I remember that.
So if you're ever going to get hanged by a government in the United States, get fat as fuck and then sue them for trying to hang you. It actually works.
So if you're more interested in the Collector versus Day, look that one up because I messed that up. But later on, I think they reversed their decision anyways. 1918, federal power to regulate interstate commerce interpreted narrowly. In Hammer versus Dagenhart, the U.S. Supreme Court rules that a federal statute prohibiting the interstate shipment of goods produced by child laborers is beyond the powers delegated to the federal government by the Constitution. The court rules that under the 10th Amendment, individual states have the right to decide how to regulate the use of child labor in manufacturing. In 1941, Hammer will be overruled by the court's decision in U.S. versus Darby. So the federal government, they use the interstate clause to grab power. That's what the FBI, why the FBI has so much power is, like in why they get involved in kidnapping, because they assumed that the kidnapped person would be taken across state lines. So they use that as a basis to increase their power.
What if we just become one big state and then there's no more interstate? They'd be fucked, wouldn't they?
Yeah, but I don't see that happening. Just because we are.
Then we could just have counties, and we'll make counties. What we'll make them into what, provinces, or it's all just words, right?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that people get confused in, states versus federal. But so 1935, New Deal legislation found to overstep federal government's authority in Schechter, Schechter, Schechter Corp. Versus the United States. Supreme Court invalidates the National Industrial Recovery Act, one of the New Deal's key pieces of federal legislation. Among its provisions are minimum wage, maximum hours requirements, and certain price controls. The court rules that the NIRA exceeds Congress's power to regulate interstate commerce and invade the state's rights to regulate manufacturing. Even an economic emergency like the Depression, the court finds, does not justify federal government's interference with the state's economic activity.
Economic.
Which later on they will reverse their ruling once again. Which, I don't know, I am more for, a smaller federal government, more states' rights. But I do get caught between, a society has to be able to set its own rules. Otherwise, you don't have a society. But finding the limits on what rules they can set.
I don't mind them setting rules as long as they do it legally. Like when they wanted to outlaw alcohol, they passed a constitutional amendment. If they want to do this shit legally, they should be passing amendments to the Constitution to make it actually constitutionally legal for them to do it.
Yeah.
In my mind. But they keep using interstate commerce as their loophole. They can do whatever they want.
That,
like, they want to have child labor laws, like, you're not allowed to work under 14. Period. Pass it through the federal system and amend the Constitution. Add that in. I don't. They're taking the lazy way.
Yeah.
Like, if they can pass these bills where like 80% of Congress and the Senate votes for it, they could have passed an amendment just as easy. It's total bullshit.
Well, with some of them, like abortion,
yep.
They don't want to because it is a third rail issue. And so politicians don't want the backlash.
They're kicking the grenade down the road. going to blow up on someone.
Yeah. 1941, courts uphold Congress's power to enact labor laws. And a switch from the anti-federal pro-states' rights ruling, such as Collector versus Hammer and Schechter. The U.S. Supreme Court rules unanimously that the U.S. versus Darby, that the federal government is within its authority to pass Fair Labor Standards Act. The court concludes that the law, which establishes numerous minimum wage, maximum labor standards nationwide, falls within Congress's authority to regulate interstate commerce.
Oh,
But
and I'd
what
like to
if
say hello to Smeggy out there. Welcome, Smeggy.
Smeggy and Honcho Fett?
Yes.
So what if your company does not deal cross state lines?
Yeah, like
Then
if you're just like a restaurant in Washington somewhere,
Yeah.
you're not. Well, I guess you might be getting shipments in from like food vendors. I don't know. It's complicated because like you weed down far enough into it, something you're using came from another state.
1995, the court says gun-free zone act is unconstitutional. In the landmark decision, the United States versus Lopez, the first time in over 50 years, U.S. Supreme Court limits the power of Congress under the Commerce Clause when it strikes down the 1990 Gun-Free Zone Act. Alfonso Lopez Jr. is caught in his San Antonio high school with a handgun and bullets. He is arrested and accused of violating the Federal Gun-Free Zone Act of 1990, which prohibits possession of guns in school zones. The court says Gun-Free School Zone Act, which bars people from knowingly carrying a gun in school zone, exceeds the power of Congress to legislate under the Commerce Act. Possession of a gun is a local school zone, not an economic activity that might, through repetition elsewhere, have substantial effect on interstate commerce.
God damn. They used interstate commerce to say you're not allowed to carry a gun on a school property.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So that's what there is no federal ban against guns in schools. It's a local ban if there is one.
Mm-hmm. Knowingly. Does that mean if I just, oh, it's so small, I forget it's there?
I think you'd still get it. They'd still
they'd still.
You. And 2000, Violence Against Women Act ruled to exceed Congress's authority. In the United States versus Morrison, the U.S. Supreme Court strikes down a provision in the Federal Violence Against Women Act as exceeding Congress's Commerce Clause authority and imposing on an area of state control. The provision, which permits victims of sexual-based violence to bring a federal lawsuit against their attackers, is found to invade states' policing power. Legislation about domestic violence and family law is traditionally left to the states. How the hell was that considered
federal?
Yeah. If you're sex trafficking, sure. You know, taking people across state lines, but
I have one way, but I'm not going to make the joke.
Yeah. And
there's a certain profession that has a staggeringly high rate of domestic abuse.
There was one case that was, I must have cut it without realizing it. But basically it was, I don't remember which amendment or what it covered, but it was an early version of the EPA ruling, the one that came out, was it this year or end of last year, where that stated that the um, basically that yeah, no, I'm losing everything. It's all falling apart now.
I would help you if I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I wish I knew what I was talking about. The agencies like the EPA,
Yes.
that they cannot, that it only Congress can make a law, and
Chevron
that,
deference.
yeah, it had to do with basically Chevron deference, but it was a case from like the 30s. I mean, it was really early. Well, relatively early, we'll say. But I don't remember what it was, and I knew I wanted to highlight it, and I must have accidentally struck it instead of highlighting it. Yeah, I don't remember which one it was. Might have been one that we talked about. Oh well. But that's the first 10 amendments of the Constitution.
We did it.
We did. I learned a lot from that. Hopefully other people did too. So if have a good night, John. Yeah, Coop is saying West Virginia versus EPA. Yeah. But you'll find, if when you get digging through, you'll find cases that that you would think would apply to stuff that we're talking about now, like was it Miller, where short barreled shotguns were ruled on the
not
ban on
protected
them.
by the Second Amendment because they were not used by the military.
Yeah. So if that's the guideline, that it has to be used by the military,
I should be able to get a full auto grease gun.
Yeah. But now it's the opposite, where if it's used by the military, it's
a weapon of war.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, they're playing the game I win. You ever played that with like a 4-year-old?
I know the game, but I have not played it.
Basically, the rules are the kid wins. Like, oh, I thought I was allowed to do this. No, you're not allowed to do that. I'm allowed to do that. Okay, can I do this? No. The game is just I win. They make up the rules as they go, and you lose. That's the game we're playing.
Yeah, with Miller, one of the problems that happened was Miller died before it went to the Supreme Court, and the co-defendant disappeared and died.
Yeah, so did Miller fall down a staircase onto some bullets?
Pretty much. So there was no one there to defend his side, and so the ruling went against him. D23 says, I learned why I skipped social studies and American history in school. I'm guessing G23 skipped a lot of school, not just those classes. But I did too. I did not enjoy going to school, so I missed the maximum allowable days every year.
I got a GED when I was 16 and told him to fuck off.
That's kind of what one of my sisters did too.
Yep.
So if should we dare to throw the link out there?
Sure.
G23 saying he got a GED at 16 also.
It's pretty fun. It's like a running start for people that don't like school, right?
Part of the problem for me was I didn't have a clue where I was going, what I wanted to do. So I didn't know what I wanted to take. So I didn't go to school. Coop said he got his GED at 17. I don't know. Looking back on it, when you hear people say, "Would you change anything? If you could go back, what would you change?" For the most part, wouldn't change anything because I'm happy where I am. And changing stuff might have changed the outcome. It might have been a better outcome. I don't know, but I don't. Only regret is just not being more outgoing when I was younger. Just kind of shy.
I think I would have quit some jobs less. Because, like, you quit a job because it's shitty and you don't like your boss, you don't like your coworkers. Then you go work somewhere else and you don't like your boss, you don't like your coworkers.
Yeah.
It's all the same. It doesn't matter.
So I dropped the link out there. So if anybody wants to jump in, you can jump in. So one of the things I was thinking about is the whole federal versus state argument.
Mm-hmm.
The strong federal government versus the strong state. And originally the federal government's job was to negotiate treaties between us and other countries, and protect us from other countries attacking. That was kind of it.
Yeah, the Articles of Confederation.
Coop is saying he wants to come in, but he needs to get some sleep.
Don't we all?
Yeah. Goddamn Bacon said, spent my senior year at a continuation school because I was over a year behind in credits. Had I known I could have gone there from the start, I would have graduated 2 years early.
I had a half a credit in high school when I got my GED.
Black Cat said he'll
PE.
try and jump in once he gets on the road. Yeah, Coop is saying solve disputes between states, provide for the common defense. And I'm okay with them promoting the general welfare. Just as long as they do it with literature and not legislation.
It's like EPA, no go.
Yeah. Oh, it's Hunter Fett graduated at 17, immediately started college that summer. He said, was hoping to work first and have fun for the summer, but parents had other plans. I kind of drifted around, um, jumped back and forth between the east side and the west side of the state. Just not really knowing what I wanted to do.
What was your first job?
First job was a courtesy clerk at a grocery store, which I barely showed up for because I wasn't ready for working.
I had a newspaper route.
What's going on, G23? Well, that's great. Glad to hear that.
Howdy.
I'm doing that.
Oh, I'll have to come out and come back in. My audio is not working.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
We'll be here. Let's go. Let's leave. Well, I had read an article by a professor, I forget what college, what university. It was like Harvard or something like that, but was trying to make an argument that the Second Amendment was a states' rights issue, not a federal government issue. So that each state should be able to legislate it however they wanted to.
Yep.
But I would say that if it's covered by the Constitution, then the federal government can stick their nose in. You know, like the Second Amendment, First Amendment. And then if it's not, then the states have a jurisdiction over it. So, you know, the Second Amendment is covered in the Constitution, so it should be protected by the federal government.
Yeah, I've heard people argue that shouldn't stop the states from infringing, which I find is lunacy.
Can you
Like,
hear us,
so-
P23? Well, he's saying he's not getting sound. Can you hear us? Anything? Nope. He's
There he
gone.
goes.
He saw his shadow.
Where were we? Oh, so like, are these people okay with like states infringing Second Amendment rights? I don't get it. Like, what do they benefit from that argument? What angle are they getting to?
Control. That's what it always comes down to. It all comes down to money or control.
So they want to be able to do whatever the hell they want in their own state, and they'll sacrifice constitutional rights to get it. That's crazy.
Well, I don't know if this is going to be an accurate statement.
What, me or you?
Me. So I'm going to generalize. It seems, now this is my opinion, that those who think that way, what you were saying, are willing to use the force of government to enforce their opinions rather than protecting rights. They think it should be this way. So they don't like guns. You should not have a gun, so the government should take your guns, regardless of what the law or the Constitution says.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I think you're right. That's what they're doing. I mean, they're human. I feel the same way about stuff. Like we were talking about the death penalty. If someone murdered one of my family members, I would fully want that person to get murdered in revenge. But I'm trying to remove my emotions from it because we have a justice system, not a revenge system. And I'm trying to think about what should the government be allowed to do to its citizens, not the other way around.
Yeah, Black Cat is bringing up that most states, have a constitution of their own. And what was it, like 42 states have a Second Amendment clause in their constitution? Something addressing.
I don't know how many, but it's not all of them.
Yeah, because we did a chat on that, and I think it was like 42. So there were 8 states that don't have anything referencing this, similar to the Second Amendment. How's it going, Bacon? How you doing?
I'm fine. I just got home and I'm being like a disgusting pig right now because I got food from 7-Eleven, so I feel like cooking. How you guys doing?
I'm doing all right.
Sick.
Sick?
Yep.
Hopefully I have to take a test to find that out.
No test for me. I'm just unclean. Stay away.
I mean, you guys, it's kind of hard to disagree with anything because it's pretty much the truth. You guys talk about the Second Amendment, like, hey, Sean being French, how did you mess up that message? Turns out you can mess up that message.
Maybe we messed up the message when we didn't have a penalty for infringing on the second. Like, if you infringe on the segment, this is what will happen to you.
Or the first or the other ones for that matter, but I mean,
we should have like a penal colony we send all of them to.
Well,
send them to Australia.
One of the problems with that,
we got a story about that in a moment.
One of the problems with doing that is the highest court in the land has gone back and forth on what that Second Amendment means.
Mm-hmm.
So what would, and we saw as we go through, as we went through cases where they overturned their own rulings. So what is considered constitutional becomes unconstitutional later, becomes constitutional later. So do you go by, if you lock up somebody for breaking the Constitution, if it becomes if the ruling is reversed later on, do you release them?
Good point. I'm thinking emotionally again, as happens. I am only human.
Actually, you bring up a good point, not just with that, but also, my whole stance, and it's been this way for, quite a while. Like, biggest mistake that, our founding fathers, or whatever you want to call them, was making a number to begin with. Perhaps they didn't know any better. This was back in the 18th century. I guess I can forgive them for that. That aside, how would you enforce? Like, I guess it would depend on who's breaking. Like, obviously, if let's say somebody forcibly or like behind your back, takes your firearms away. That person's a private citizen. I mean, that's covered. That's covered under theft, obviously, but that also would be violating the Second Amendment. You would be taking this person's property and his way in a way for them to defend themselves. Arguably one of the best ways to defend yourselves. Last resort or otherwise. So yeah, I mean that person could obviously be, they could be prosecuted, but hey, if a judge, suddenly decides, you're mentally unfit to, you're a danger to society, and they can order the local police or county sheriffs or whoever there, and come take it. Like, what's going to be the consequence for them?
Well, that
Or
that's come up where under the red flag laws, where there's a guy that was. Somebody said that he was unstable, so he was taken to a hospital. The cops went back to his house, took his guns, and I think he did finally. At least he got his long guns. I don't know if he got his handguns back, but it took years because the police wouldn't release his guns to him, even though he was found to be mentally stable.
I mean, that falls into the whole thing of, okay, hey, guilty until proven innocent.
Yeah.
Well, how about the confiscation in Katrina after the hurricane?
Oh, I mean, that's a clear. I mean, you know what? Let's say, let's try to play devil's advocate, which that's a lot of people do, and you know what happens when you give them an inch. That's what she said. You know, even if you want to, say that's justified. Okay, this guy might be crazy. He might, go off on a pew pew spree and take the lives of 100 people with this clear weapon of war. This guy's literally declared war on humanity. Okay, maybe you have a point there. Maybe you do want to be proactive on that rather than reactive. Okay, people are taking off from a city that for some reason they thought it was a good idea to build under sea level, and found out the hard way, well, that's a bad idea. Now, okay, I'm sure it's real fun there during Mardi Gras stuff, but yeah, when a hurricane rolls up and destroys the thing that's keeping the entire ocean from leveling your city, yeah, I can understand you want to get out. I don't think many people are thinking of committing crimes in the city they're actively trying to escape from. So, does anybody know the exact reason the cops there were given to confiscate any firearms for people who are actively escaping a natural disaster or an act of God or whatever you want to call it?
I assume they did it as an excuse for the looting that was happening.
Right,
So anyone that was armed, they took your gun.
And the whole Katrina thing, like the levees failed because they weren't maintained, because the people put in charge of maintaining them didn't have a clue what they were doing. They were just put there because they were friends of whoever was in charge of putting them there. And then when Katrina hit, I don't know what percentage of the police force left. They went home to be with their family. So, there weren't a lot of cops left, and the cops that were there were, I think, just doing what they saw they had to do. Right or wrong.
I mean, and again, what were these people who were potentially going to, go looting and pillaging and, other things I probably shouldn't say out of fear of getting your channel struck? Where are they going to go do all that stuff? The cities that we're fleeing to, that I would imagine, since they're going to these cities or towns or compounds or whatever, probably a little bit more secure than the ones they're actively running away from. I mean, this fails common sense 101 on pretty much any level I could think of. You guys just find a way to make that sense. I'm all ears.
don't
There
think we
is no
can.
there is no sense. This is a dangerous situation, so we'll take away your ability to protect yourself from the danger.
Yeah,
And then we
because
won't protect you.
when the ocean is coming to swallow up my house, I'm not thinking about getting into a canoe or, getting into getting in my car, escaping at best possible speed like everybody else. Yeah, I'm thinking about I hear that's super effective with saltwater about it. A friend told me. But then again,
I hold, my opinion is the government does not like guns because it is the
They put
biggest
holes in
threat
things.
to their power. So that's why the government wants to get rid of the guns.
the biggest check to the power, that's for sure. There was something I actually read a while back. I'm not gonna. There's no one I can take credit for this, but I think it makes a good amount of sense. You know what? If the government wasn't doing something that would make you want to have to defend yourself using those firearms, it wouldn't be trying to take them in the first place. Which begs the question: what do they have in mind? What do they have in mind? Now, I don't know. Maybe I'm a crazy conspiracy theorist, which that tends to be a badge of honor these days. But here's the thing. I think we sort of got a preview of what could possibly happen. A couple years ago. I can't remember exactly what it was. Something happened at 2020. If you guys want to jog my memory, go for it. Something about being non-essential and having to wear certain articles of clothing. Later you had to disclose specific medical records, or you couldn't go shopping, or you're out of a job. Quite literally and thank you. I don't know. I'm sure after the stream is done or I get out of here, whatever, it's gonna come way too late. Something like that.
Yeah, I understand that comparison. I don't like making that comparison just because it gets overused. And I'm not saying that you're wrong.
That's fair. I'm just making a slight. I'm not gonna go into a whole tirade about that. I'm just making reference. This is a global thing that happened, and
Well, they were taking guns before that ever happened.
that's true. Yes.
Because that's what the Gun Control Act, was it Gun Control Act or NFA? Originally was to take handguns, but they realized they couldn't take handguns, so they applied it to
NFA.
So they applied it to short-barreled shotguns and stuff like that.
I think the Gun Control Act was in response to Kennedy getting killed.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
I thought that one was before that. What was the one that started in 1934 or whatever?
NFA.
That was the NFL. Okay. I get these mixed up.
Where's G Webs when we need him? He's got all this stuff memorized. Gun Control Act is 68.
68, okay.
AGOT's out there. Good evening.
Hello, AGO2, and hello, Black Hat Outdoors. I think I've seen them before.
Yeah, the whole reason short-barreled rifles are on the NFA is because they were going to outlaw handguns, and they didn't want people to cut down rifles and make them into handguns. So they made short rifles illegal. And then they took the handgun part out, and they're like, yeah, you can have a handgun. They left in the short rifle being illegal. Bullshit. It's totally it's insane. Makes no sense.
It's all arbitrary numbers. When Washington, before the magazine capacity limit was passed, the year before, I was up at the hearing, one of the hearings for him, and
Really?
one of the proponents said, I don't know if they were state representative, state senator, I don't remember who it was, but that because they wanted a 10-round limit and they changed it to 15. Well, 12 and 15, I don't remember the exact number, but they had raised the number, and he said they did that to try and find a balance to satisfy both sides. Well, if 10 was so important that you needed to ban it, to make a 10-round limit, but you're willing to increase that limit, then that 10-round was not so important. So
No kidding.
these are arbitrary numbers.
If it was that important, they also wouldn't grandfather in every single one you already had. Right?
Or for that matter, I'm no firearms expert, and there's a lot of people that they can literally talk about different firearms, all this kind of stuff, until next, Christmas of next year, starting from today. The whole silencer thing, which they're called suppressors, but let's use the big scary word. They're silencers. They're used by assassins. They're so dangerous. I mean, they're so dangerous, so bad, in fact, that for the low price of $200, you can get a tax stamp and have one legally.
Yeah, that applies to all the things that are covered by the $200 tax stamp. You're not. Yeah, it's that $200 verifies. You do the background check, but that $200 is what says you're okay to have it.
Yeah, I guess if I work a pretty nice hard day or something, I want to pay the price of a brand new PlayStation 2, like when it first came out. I could have something that makes my it makes my weapon of war sound like I'm in a James Bond movie.
Yeah, well, the original patent, they were called silencers. So
Yep.
you're not. It's okay. I feel it's okay to call them silencers.
I do it because it pisses people off, and it's the patented term.
They almost passed the Safe Hearing Act just before the
Las Vegas shooting.
Las Vegas. It was all set and looked like it was going to pass, and the Las Vegas shooting happened, which had nothing to do with silencers. And
he clearly wasn't using any kind of noise suppression there.
No,
Wasn't their excuse?
There's a lot
Imagine
of
if he
had a lot of questions about that, but that kind of falls into, I guess, some conspiracy.
Wait a minute. Hey, you know what? That we're not supposed to talk about it anymore. Remember, they removed this from the news for a reason. Wonder why.
Yeah.
It's all speculative.
Let's not forget. You remember when Trump wanted to ban suppressors?
Yeah.
I heard about that.
Just a reminder, fuck that guy.
Take
He
the
is
gun
not a
first.
Dubé supporter.
Take the gun
Please
first.
do
then
not
due process.
let him through the primaries. Yeah.
Sorry for everybody who is excited that he finally said he's finally running for re-election again. Which, personally, I think he'd be I think it's more of a reinstatement. I think. But yeah, it's like look, okay, this guy has done bad things. He's done some pretty good things too. Before he was actually in politics, so to speak. The guy's not a deity. Come on.
I was hoping that I didn't want to see him run again. I was hoping that he, because he still has a lot of influence. So I was hoping he would use that to push a good candidate. So I don't know.
Well, not only that, like, because I kept hearing, I was like, just wait 4 years. Like, he's going to run again. He's going to help make America great again, all this kind of stuff. Well, you have 4 years to do that before, which, in fairness, if they're going to blame him for all the bad things that happen, you're going to have to give him the good things if you're going to do this with the former vice president that's, up there now. No, fine. Okay. Gas was at $4 a gallon, for starters. We weren't about to run out of diesel. Those are kind of important things. But, like, for everybody who's there, like, last I checked, like, if this guy runs, like, isn't he like 78 something years old?
Which one?
They're all that old.
Right. Well, fair to say, it seems like he at least someone has his marbles, together.
Call me crazy. I'm hoping we get a actual 2A option in 2024. That'd be nice, in my opinion.
Yeah, but it was like, I don't know. I took kind of the radio size not just because, he got banned off of every platform, Alex Jones style. The guy's like, he's in his mid to late 70s. I'm sure he's a fairly healthy dude, all considerations taken. It's like, he's got grandkids, right? I'm pretty sure you want to spend some time with him. So, I mean, just on that basis alone, I was kind of like, okay, let him fucking go. You know what? He ran to show he could do it, and he did it. Good for him. He pissed off a lot of people, mostly the right ones. Credit, good. That I'm all in favor of.
One of the things I was kind of curious about is, since he's running and he's been banned from all that. I think he got back. Twitter let him back, but how does equal time apply with any of these platforms?
Equal time? I'm not sure I follow.
That's where, for radio and TV, candidates are supposed to get equal time. So they can't just cover one candidate. Like if they like one more than the other, they can't just cover the one they like. They have to give the opponent equal time.
That's a thing.
That's a thing.
I'm gonna take a wild guess to say this applies to the federal, like the basically the media is covered under FCC. Yeah. So radio, television, I don't know, smoke signals, are those covered under the FCC? I'm not sure. Ham radio, I guess, too. And that was the whole thing back in 2020, 2021, when a lot of people were getting kicked. It was like, oh, these are private companies, they're not under regulations. But they're basically,
that's another load of bullshit where they're platforms, they're not publishers, but they're acting like publishers and not like platforms.
Right, exactly. Oh, the newspapers, different websites and stuff, I guess. The ones that are leased under networks, I guess that would count as well.
So we were asked a question. 2A option, what does that look like? It doesn't look like Biden. It doesn't look like Trump.
Oh, you meant like like an actual, like political person, not 2A straight up. Because I was just going to say everybody should be able to own a tactical nuke.
No.
There's my answer.
I don't know. I don't know who would be running. That would be another option. I don't think DeSantis will run.
I don't know. You never know. Usually in these things, like the first people to get into the race are the first to lose, from my experience.
In part because, they get some dirt dug up on them, or they get some sort of character assassination. Anybody remember Herman Cain, by the way? Just asking for a friend. Also, it just got dark in here.
Herman Cain is dead.
I know. By the way, if you bring him up even if you bring it up to this day, like some people still find a way to trash the guys. Like, the dude's dead. Like, come on, what's wrong with you? Actually, don't answer that question. I don't want to know. Hello, Vanessa Kitty, by the way.
There's a subreddit called Herman Cain Awards.
Oh no.
Mm-hmm.
Please tell me what this entails.
Oh, it's people that died from COVID.
Oh, really?
Thinking it's nothing. Yeah.
No, jeez. Because Herman Cain, he clearly had no underlying issues. That wasn't a thing. Plus, he was what, like 98 years old or something? Kidding. I don't know. Teleopsis, as far as, if we're talking about the president, it's too early. We're still about 2 years out from that.
So is he actually asking us to give us a candidate to run for president?
Good question. I can
only vote. I can't nominate.
True. I mean, you know, if he said he's still listening. If he could elaborate, that'd be great. Because clearly Biden isn't a 2A option, but as you pointed out, neither is Trump. So, and for the reasons you stated.
And clearly, one
By
of
the
them
way,
is
don't forget
more
that whole
pro-gun than the
thing,
other.
What's that?
Clearly, one of them is more pro-2A than the other. I'm just saying, during the primary process where we're picking the candidate for the Republican Party, we can do a lot better. Kind of pisses me off.
Well,
I don't want to settle for take the guns first, due process later. Fuck that guy.
We'll see who else runs and whether there is a better option.
I hope so.
You mentioned DeSantis, and I'm not going to pretend I know a lot about the guy. I don't, but I mean, it's just the same thing. Like with who's the government of that won re-election in Texas? Greg Abbott, I think.
Abbott.
Yeah, Abbott.
The fact that so many people were against him, that kind of tells me, there's a reason they're doing that. So just by process, like, you know what? Okay, if they hate him this much, then clearly there's something he's doing that makes them hate him.
There were a lot of attacks against DeSantis too, news stories.
Yeah, him too.
And then Trump took swipes at him in his speeches he did this week or last week.
Yeah, he feels threatened.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but he's still the demigod of America. Okay, guys. Like, come on, the guy. I don't know if you guys knew this. You know the thing I hate about Trump the most. You want to know what I hate about him the most? I don't have a lot of reason to hate him, but this is why I hate him.
He's from New York.
I don't even care about that much. All that means is that he's just going to talk about how
I'm just joking.
You can't get any good pizza anywhere, and the reason is because of their water or something like that. When I feel like going there to pay $16 for a slice of pizza, I'll report back on that. No, and you guys can tell me if this is true or not. This is just something that I've okay, in fairness, this is something I saw off the internet. And again, that's how most of us learn things these days. The guy not only cooks his steaks, like completely well done, which is already a crime against humanity to begin with. Guess what condiment he uses on it? As a hint, it's worse than A1.
Heinz ketchup.
Heinz ketchup. Wait, did you know that specifically?
Yep.
It's like, who eats steak like that, man?
Poor people.
Are you saying that's his way of, Are you saying that's his way of empathizing with the little guy? Hey, I know you guys can't cook your steaks. I'm going to eat them just like you.
I don't know. I can empathize with him doing that more than like him eating escargot and caviar.
I suppose so.
The guy serves Big Macs for visiting sport teams to the White House. I don't mind that.
Big Mac I can get behind because you know what, it's one of McDonald's most iconic items. You know exactly what you're getting. You know when you accept that, so just enjoy it. It's like eating ice cream. You know it's not a health food. You want ice cream, just enjoy the ice cream. Vanessa's Kitty's right, by the way. More people certainly know how to prepare foods. Beyond ketchup on steak. I'm kind of scared now to hear what kind of cuts he's using to do that. I didn't get that specific into it. Yeah.
I don't like anything on a steak. If its steak is good, you don't need anything on it.
No, I agree. I mean, salt and pepper taste, maybe. That's about it.
Yeah, the steaks I had were not good, and you did need something on it.
Oh, I got a fun fact. Any guys ever visit any steakhouses or places that they're just restaurants, but they're sort of known for their steaks as well?
Used to work at one.
Okay. What's the problem with ordering a steak that's medium well or over? As a customer.
Not sure I follow.
It's wrong. You're ruining your steak.
Well, aside from that, let's just say, I don't know, you think blood is yucky, but you still eat steak for whatever reason. Okay, that I can understand. But here's the thing, and you can let me know, Baron, if this happened at your steakhouse or something you've run across. Dry, that could be the case. So you actually can make it still somewhat juicy, but it's just a little bit overcooked. Depends. The whole thing about that, you let it rest. I'm not gonna get too far into weeds that. Basically, most people who go to steakhouse, they're gonna order it medium or below. So they're gonna reserve their best cuts for that. Not necessarily their freshest because aging is a thing, but they're gonna reserve their best ones for that because that's where the meat is gonna shine the most. As quality meat. The more you cook it, the less the quality of the meat actually matters, believe it or not. So they're more likely to give you the cuts that like they might have like just given out or turned into hamburger or something.
I've heard that.
Yeah, we didn't do that per se, but let's say we had a prime rib, and I'm cutting off the prime rib to give you a chunk, right? It's sitting in a warming oven, so the ends they won't be as rare as the middle piece will.
Right.
So let's say you get you want it well done, that's coming right off the end. I'm not giving you a piece out of the middle.
Well, that's just by necessity, to be fair.
Yeah. I can't make it less done.
Right. Same thing
I always order medium rare. That way, if they overcook it, it's going to be medium. And if they undercook it, it's rare, which I'm fine with.
Yeah. It's a happy medium. Okay.
I'm trying to read this. So you're saying keep our 2A as it states and find a person who stands for them.
Oh.
So if he means, or she, I'm not sure. The Second Amendment shall not be infringed. All gun laws are unconstitutional. Yes, I'd like a candidate that believes that and actually stands for it.
You'd never win, but that would be nice. I mean, okay, so I guess what he's doing is he's calling for, at a bare minimum, like kind of at least keep the status quo, keep things as it is. If I understand that correctly.
She.
Or She, okay. Hello, AJ. She. Keep it as it states. I mean, the way it's doing right now is like the way it is right now is that's the way it is right now. Two ways.
I don't like how it is right now.
The law. It's like the bizarro version of Matthew McConaughey's line. Like, hey, the rules changed. You know, the amendments stayed the same. So, I mean, if we're going by that interpretation, you're asking for the status quo. I suppose that's better than things getting worse. But it's not making anything any better.
So, for example, we've had libertarian candidates in the past that would say all gun laws are unconstitutional. You should be able to buy a machine gun from a vending machine.
Or order to your house.
Yeah.
I heard that was a big one.
Well, you look at for libertarians, you look at Gary Johnson. I liked a lot of his stances. He was just a goofy motherfucker. And
Yeah, he was.
as he got older, he smoked more weed and got goofier.
Oh man!
Do you remember that interview where they brought up the if you smoke weed within the first 5 minutes, you're more likely to have a heart attack, and then he dropped down onto the stage and pretended to have a heart attack. Did you see that?
Oh, that's funny.
He's funny. I don't know if he was the type of funny that wins an election, though.
No, he was not. Clearly was not.
No.
Yeah, that's fair.
I would prefer these third-party candidates would run in the primaries for the main two parties. A la, Donald Trump was kind of a third-party candidate that ran as a Republican. Bernie Sanders, same thing. They have a better chance getting elected doing that.
I suppose so. I mean,
If you pull a Ross Perot, it's not going to work.
yeah, it's true. It's kind of, a lot of people they do have a good point. The point now, we have all these other parties, but it's just a two-party system. So. Then again, everyone's clamoring to be part of that system. So you get what you pay for, what you wish for, I guess.
Why have any party? I'm not saying you have to, but
She
for
means
being
political.
realistic, you kind of need to run as one of the two in our current situation. Not saying that's ideal, but you can't change it without winning first, right?
True. And it's kind of like what you said. You can say, Orange Man Bad was whatever political side. I mean, he was a Democrat, I think, for a number of years. Before he was independent or whatever.
He was a New York Democrat.
And he's a New York immigrant. I mean, but yeah, it was he had to run as a Republican. You're right about that.
Well, the Democrat Party has moved so far left that he became a Republican by not moving with them.
That's a fair point.
He's kind of a populist, so his stances change a lot more depending on what everybody says. But that's with Bill Maher. He is a lefty liberal, but the party has moved even farther left than him because he used to be on the far left, but now the far left is so far left that he is he's almost a conservative Democrat now, and he hasn't moved his stance.
I'm not sure if the far left has moved further left, as opposed to the party has moved closer to the people that are already far left. Because like we already had communists.
Yeah.
Like, what's beyond a communist? Has that moved?
Well, I think we're
Talk about a question you don't want answered.
I think we're kind of saying the same thing, but
Yeah.
it's not. I mean, the majority of it has moved. So the party has moved. Not that the left is so much farther out.
I think a small minority has a bigger voice, and they're asserting more power. It's like 16% of the United States is the fringe, far left and far right. It's like 8% on both sides. And they're getting like 90% of the news coverage.
Yeah, I think it has maybe started coming back to the center a little bit because like AOC, when she came in, and then the rest of, I forget what they call that group.
The squad.
You know, they had everybody was listening to them, and then they're not in the news cycle as they were. So they have fallen out of favor. Which AOC was an actress that was chosen not because of her political ideas. She was chosen by the party to play that part. They had auditions to find somebody to fill that seat.
You sound like my buddy Big Igor Phil. This is exactly the same thing that he says. Like most of these people they're actors anyways. By the way, that does go for a lot of the protesters here, including some of the ones that were. I mean, I was actually on the ground for this. Like, remember the whole Chaz Chop thing a couple years ago? Yeah, I was on the ground watching that when I first started.
Well, there used to be ads. I would see them when I was in Eastern Washington in the WSU newspaper, and then also on the west side in the Olympian. There would be ads for protesters, trying to hire people to protest.
Wow, so they were in the actual newspaper. They weren't just like they weren't just on the internet or signs on telephone poles or anything.
No,
like
they
that.
were want ads in the newspaper. I don't know if they still do that. That this was quite a few years ago when I saw it.
No, a lot of people think these are organic things. They're not. Like a lot of these, they're actually paid to go out and do this. They don't even have to bring their own brick. They don't have to. They don't even get a stipend to go to Home Depot or, Lowe's or something like that. They don't have to go to local Ace Hardware. They show up by themselves too. They're fully funded. Yeah, maybe I'm in the wrong career. How much do these guys make again? Maybe I'm in the wrong career here. Holy crap.
Well, we're coming up on 2 hours, so I think we'll shut her down. I don't do the 8-hour streams that you do.
I didn't even do that last night. Oh, speaking of, that's what I wanted to bring up. I don't know if you saw last night, but Dark, I guess he caught part of the show. He had quite his own version of commentary on it. Because, I mean, he's always talking about you, like, to his little. Basically, that's our right, literally our right to self-defense as given to us by God or, supernatural force, whatever, our creators, as he puts. However you interpret that. We had some guy on that. I found him like a year ago, and he decided to jump on last night. And we ended up getting this whole freaking discussion. I totally forgot about this until he brought it up tonight. And
I didn't see it, but I heard other people talking about it.
Oh Jesus! Okay, well, it's gonna give me an idea what I'm gonna be in for whenever I check back into social media. Jesus Christ! I was like, this guy's from Australia. What were you guys expecting? And he came in with all the same talking points, and not only him, which I mean, okay, Australia literally comes from being a prison colony. They're kind of used to being, ordered. They're kind of used to the whole "govern me harder, daddy," mindset. Like they're okay with it. Same thing the UK, tends to do. Other countries, for that matter. But, I mean, you still have people who are like that.
Some of them live in Washington State, by the way. I don't know if you've noticed.
Uh,
I mean, we can't really throw stones. All three of us are in Washington right now. Look what's going on.
that's true, but at least you know what? At least we don't have an entire country that thinks that like the people around us. And even here, obviously, we're all here in Washington, but we're all here in Washington. You don't hear eight of us, talking about how we're this so we never needed a firearm to defend ourselves or whatever the hell happened last night. Just by the way, I want to point out, you're talking about restricted firearms. I mean, how sexist is that? Because that's a little equalizer in any kind of a physical conflict. And I don't know about you, but I love women in my life. Even some of the ones that are outside of it. I want them to be able to defend themselves if they have to.
Yeah.
Are you not allowed to use a gun to defend yourself in Australia?
I'll
I
be
know they have
honest.
restricted guns, but they can still have guns.
They
Right.
can. I think it's probably about as strict as probably more so, but it's probably something along the lines of either like Canada or like France. So you have to be part of a gun club or something or
Didn't they
hunting
have
team.
a mandatory turn-in a year or two
For some
ago?
guns, yeah.
Yeah. Which nobody did. I think it was only they estimated 20, maybe 20% of those guns were turned in.
Ooh, I'm loving these new URLs. This is so
Oh,
much
thank you, by
easier.
the way. Thank
Right
you,
there.
Rob. Thank you.
Isn't that way easier to find somebody now?
Yeah,
With the
like the whole
handles?
customized handles and all that stuff.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it only took me like a year to figure out how to do that.
Yeah, those are different than the old custom ones. Because the other ones had, you could, like mine, it was DM Foss, but then there was some other in between, in the middle. It wasn't an at. There was some kind of other letters. I don't remember.
Channel, I don't know,
Yeah,
:/ or something like that.
yeah.
Yeah, like if I need to tell somebody to get to my YouTube channel, this is super easy. Just youtube.com/@BaronSVG. Super sweet. Thank you, YouTube.
Hey, you know what? Broken clock can be right twice a day. You too can do things that are actually beneficial every once in a while.
Oh, the gun snob. Yeah, we're closing it down. I smelt you coming, so I thought I'd shut it down, but I didn't get it closed fast enough.
We were having an interesting conversation, so we overstayed our welcome. Yes, I do.
So before we go, Bacon, is there anything you want to say? Anything you want to plug?
I mean, you plugged my channel. I appreciate that. I don't know who's doing what tomorrow, so I can't really plug anything as far as that goes. If you want to get away from news, you can check out Big Angry Phil. I mentioned him earlier. He does. I mean, he'll cover the news every once in a while, like just kind of in a funny way or whatever. A lot of stuff he does. The half stuff he does now is gaming. Let's just put it though. It's fun watching him, like, utterly fail at some points. He actually lives up to his name. I don't know. We'll plug him. I know everybody knows Dark and Crump and the other guys. So, no. There's also Kuba, C&P Designs and Arms. He does a lot of good work as well. No, that's all I got.
Baron, anything you want to plug?
Yeah, I don't have anything that real important.
All right. Yeah, no chat Wednesday. I have to work again, but we're gonna do a chat Thursday, and after Thanksgiving chat.
Oh, okay.
I don't know, what time should we do that?
Same time. People staying up for Black Friday sales can tune in.
So 10:30 on Thursday, we'll do one.
That should be interesting.
Other than that,
How many people tune in while they're dealing with the effects of eating way too much stuffing and mac and cheese, but they're somehow going to blame it on turkey too. Different topic for another time.
Yeah. So I appreciate everybody that was out there in the live chat, chatting it up. You guys make it fun. And those who watch this in replay, appreciate you too. Leave a comment. Let me know. I always read the comments and I always appreciate them. And there's links for Bacon and Baron's channels if you guys want to check those out. And other than that, I think that's everything. Well, we're going to pretend that's everything. So I do appreciate everybody. And if I find the right outro, I hope everybody has a good night.
You still here? It's over. Go home.